anyways, while the slides are being loaded, I just wanted to say, so first of all, I was incredibly inspired by your talk, as well as maybe somewhat depressed, because I will go through kind of the effort that we've started here. Essentially, so my name is Abha Gupta. I'm a medical oncologist. I work with Abha here at UHN Princess Margaret, and I'm also a pediatric oncologist at the Hospital for Sick Children. So I had a patient, and he has embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma of the prostate. And so he's this like carefree water skiing guy, goes to Florida for school, and he says to me, Dr. Gupta, how come you don't track the data and pathology of every single patient with sarcoma across the country? Turns out his grandfather is the late Michael Wilson, who's the finance minister of Canada. And so it's actually his family that gave us the initial funds and said, can you please create a registry for Canada in order to achieve this goal, to capture data for all patients with sarcoma. And so as a naive clinician, I was like, yeah, sure, sounds great. And so, exactly. And so then when you made it sound so amazing and so easy to create this. And then, but what we've actually done is to really, when you distill down to the details, this is where actually I think this is where I would actually enjoy people's opinion. So with the small amount, it's also very interesting, we have these really, this family is amazing and very giving, but they say, do this really big thing with this amount of money. And so we started off by hiring two people. We have like a project manager and we have a senior clinical research associate. And so with this very small team, it's just the three of us, really, we've launched this. I agree with every single point you made. So thank you so much. So let's suppose we did want to ask very simple questions, even those that were posed this morning. What is the value of chemotherapy in patients with cardiac sarcoma? What are the keys to the biology of cardiac sarcoma? It's really this kid, Patrick Wilson and his family, that really have inspired the development of this database. And as I mentioned, they really had a very simple request. So in Canada, this is from the Canadian Cancer Society. The total number of all cancers in 2017 population is about 36,000. And we're a very geographically large country and with significant heterogeneity between all the provinces. The issue is we don't even know what the denominator is. We do not know in Canada how many individuals there are diagnosed with sarcoma annually. We've already discussed how rare sarcoma is. Not only, we say the word sarcoma, it doesn't even mean anything anymore because there are multiple tumors. Moreover, as has already been alluded to, we don't, even if we asked 5 pathologists in the room to say, is this angiosarcoma or EHE or something else, we may not even have agreement. So it's really not just about calling something a sarcoma, but in fact, what flavor. This effort isn't something for which we have government funding at this time, which also creates another barrier. So, my initial premise of this talk was, is there even value in creating a national sarcoma database? And it was really inspiring to be here to say, yes, I think everybody, maybe I'm speaking to the converted. But, I wonder, what would you say are the values or the characteristics that best describes the creation of a national database for a very rare tumor? It's a labor of love. It's a long-term investment with no short-term gain. Requires selfless dedication from all of us, as has already been mentioned. Sustainable funding. Yes, generate new research ideas. Has the potential for creating a rich repository of data. Strengthen clinical and research networks. And hopefully actually improve patient outcome. All of the above. So then the question is, do we start with the mountain or the molehill? Do we start with something really fancy, in-depth? Sure, we can hire lots of people, project manager, an implementation specialist, data coordinators. We've alluded to biobanking and and we haven't actually alluded to the cost of biobanking. And so let's say this, even just for 4 years, costs $3 million. We don't have that. We don't have the mountain, so we're going to start with the molehill. This is our country, and this is, it's, when we think of, the registries that have been successful in the past, at least within sarcoma, notwithstanding the TARPSWIG registry that Robin has alluded to, but let's say the French Sarcoma Registry and others, the countries are geographically very small, and so I think that has actually helped with facilitating interaction between people, at least in the past, and transfer of data and tissue. For us, there are so many aspects to this. We would like to design a database that is prospective and involves patient consent. We have to, at the same time, be cognizant of limiting their identity and maintaining privacy. We would ideally like the data to be entered prospectively, as I just mentioned, and this raises the questions for how frequently should data be entered? Every clinic visit? At every event that occurs? How often? I think pathology is a huge issue. It's especially in sarcoma. And as we know, it's not only going to be about that slide, it's going to be about the further integration of that slide. Is it going to be DNA? Is it going to be RNA? What is it going to be? The tissue is a huge problem, and the form the tissue is stored in, whether or not these were needle core biopsies that were taken for these large 20-centimeter tumors, like in the retroperitoneum or even in the extremity, then have been exposed to therapy. We're asking a lot of interrogative questions on these very small pieces of tumor potentially. And then, of course, it's always about, well, what's in it for me? Where is my name going to be on that publication, and who is going to take ownership, and who gets the credit for the work that's being done, not only within institution, not only between institutions, but even within an institution. Sarcoma is a fascinating disease, and I will say shout out to our sarcoma team in Toronto, and I'm sure it's the same with all of us. Our sarcoma, we just say our sarcoma meetings are like little family reunions, because the sarcoma community is known to be very kind to each other and very nice. And I would say within Toronto as well, the multidisciplinary team that we have here is also very kind to each other and very, very collaborative. But it's a large team, isn't it? Because it's not just about surgeons, it's about surgeons, radiation oncology, radiology, pathology, and maybe even some quality of life experts. So as I mentioned, we took the plunge, and we also leveraged what we already had. What we had is our strong Toronto sarcoma team. And the second thing that the sarcoma team had was this platform. Now, I was telling Ravi about the limitations of this platform, but this is where I wanted to discuss with you also. So we are using the Datos platform, which is housed here at UHN. In fact, this predated even my arrival to this initiative. It began as a GI database amongst the surgeons over a decade ago. It was housed the surgeons had their sarcoma patient data stored on Microsoft Access, and they moved to this Datos platform in 2018. And so we're using this pre-existing platform that the surgeons had already started entering their sarcoma data to expand to this national registry. So Datos is an open platform for prospective data collection in clinical and translational research. As mentioned, it's housed on the UHN network. It's fully compliant with privacy regulations, and it also has a web-based interface. So these are the two team members that have basically been essentially running the show. So the mission really of CanSarc is to the vision is to improve the outcome of patients with sarcoma. But of course, we would like to offer the platform for designing clinical trials, exploring disease patterns, and understanding disease biology. So currently, our database has over 600 data fields. There's always this pull, isn't there, between data quality, data depth and quantity. because we know that as soon as we increase the number of data points that we want, we are going to compromise potentially the quality of the data. However, if you don't include that field, then you know that's the question that this next researcher is going to want to ask. We have made the decision to have a virtual biobank. The idea of moving tissues from one place to another, even across the street in this city, is a monumental effort. And so we said, you know what, we are only going to virtually biobank. We will know exactly where the tissue is located, what is the specimen number, and which community hospital that original biopsy was taken in, so that if at some point in time somebody is interested in doing translational research, we know where that tissue lies. So we said, we have to be able to include other centers. This is not also, our vision is, and the family's vision is not a Toronto thing. It just so happens that the patient happened to be in Toronto and asking us to lead the effort. So how do we sell this to other centers? So we developed a steering committee which represents the country and represents multiple disciplines. We have, if you go onto our website, cansarc.ca, you will be able to search for those participating institutions by entering their province. And so far, this is just a Canadian effort. So we figured we are able to give something back to every other centre in Canada. Toronto is the largest centre. We have the most funding and infrastructure within our institution. So imagine that for free, for no cost, we are offering this data platform to all other centres within the country. All an institution has to do is sign up. We will provide the Datos platform for free. We are covering the cost of all of the data manipulation. Each center is responsible for entering their own data and will own their own data that they enter. And then we do the rest. We will data mine for them. We will create data generation for them. Everybody is then permitted to submit a request for a project. Maybe Ravi wants to study cardiac angiosarcoma. You submit your project request, and the idea of the agreement is between the institutions that you will then be able to use everyone else's data. So for example, this is a list of active projects that we could have potentially ongoing. And a project is submitted to the committee, it is reviewed, and if approved, then all of the data that's been submitted from all the other centers can be pulled together. Only us as the gatekeepers of the data will have access to everyone else's data. No other center can see the other center's information. All of these, it's all web-based, so people can submit their project requests online. And all of our forms for governance, the actual protocol to submit to your local institutions are all also available online. Of course, one of the biggest limitations here is funding. I'm not sure how other registries are being funded, whether it's a combination of philanthropy and grant money or federal funding, but this is by far going to be our biggest limitation for sure. So to date, in the last year, we have established our steering committee, developed the governance documents, and we're working with legal now. So we've established a contract with UHN, which we've submitted to other centers, so that their legal departments can then review that contract and make sure that we can start with a solid, single, unified contract that everybody can participate in. I think, Ravi, you had mentioned this idea of a data dictionary. We have also created a data dictionary in order to define each of those 600 data fields. The idea here is that fellows, well, maybe some fellows can enter data, but anybody who's entering data should be trained on how to do data entry. This is the key. Not everybody can enter data, and this is the one thing that actually I've also learned. Physicians are probably the worst people at entering data because they're like, oh, it's kind of 10 centimeters, whereas if you have somebody who's truly trained at entering data, they will be as precise and as possible. Nicole, our lead CRA, has actually also organized a webinar to offer training on data entry to students, to CRAs, and to other members across the country. And so she's already delivered one of these. And this is just, like literally to the detail about how data entry should be carried out. I think this is a screenshot of the data dictionary that we've also created. This is a screenshot of the contract that we have with these multiple institutions that are currently reviewing this. So it is about collaboration and community. And I think one of the biggest ideas here is that if it's just one medical team that's creating this, it's maybe not going. It will be much richer if we do have a multidisciplinary contribution to a database, but the number of data points then does increase between radiation oncology, medical oncology, surgical oncology, pathology, et cetera. So there are huge challenges, and I welcome lots of discussion now to try and discuss and circumvent these challenges. But I think at the end of the day, if we can go back to our basic research questions and say maybe this is the way that we'll be able to achieve these goals. So I would say there is value in creating a national sarcoma database, cansarc.ca. So, and the last slide is just a plug for our Toronto International Sarcoma Symposium, which is happening in May. So everybody's welcome to attend.